नमस्कार, मैं ऋषभ मल्होत्रा आज आपके बीच एक और फेमस पर्सनालिटी को लेकर आया हूँ। राम गोपाल जी इज अ पैनलिस्ट इन द सेशन। ही इज अ फेमस पर्सनालिटी इन फाइनेंशियल मार्केट। 11 साल का लंबा समय राम जी का रहा है। इन्होंने यूएई में स्टैंडर्ड चार्टर्ड बैंक के साथ में तय किया। 3 साल का समय सिटी बैंक के साथ में एसोसिएटेड रहे। He is on various boards with European committees, financial committees के साथ में जुड़े हुए हैं, CIA के साथ में जुड़े हुए हैं। 2007 से 9 का समय आपने GRCB के साथ में कंट्रीब्यूट किया एज ए सीईओ। 2017 आपने बार्कले को ज्वाइन किया। बार्कले को इंडिया में एक असीम ऊंचाई तक लेकर जाने का श्रेय आपके पास में है। अदर देन दिस, लाइक स्ट्रेटेजिक प्लानिंग और डिजाइनिंग और एग्जीक्यूशन आपके पास ही है इसकी रिस्पॉन्सिबिलिटीज। राम गोपाल जी, मैं आपका इस सेशन में स्वागत करता हूं। और इस सेशन में हमारे साथ में करीब करीब 10,000 एमएसएमईज और 1 लाख के आसपास हमारे अर्ली एज बिजनेसेस जुड़ेंगे। ये सभी के सभी लोग इंडिया के अलावा यूएस, यूरोप, यूके, मॉरिशियस में भी हमारे साथ में जुड़े हुए हैं। तो उन सबको मौका मिलेगा आपके बारे में जानने का, आपसे कुछ नई चीजें सीखने का और उनको अपने जीवन में इम्प्लीमेंट करने का। मैं चाहूंगा कुछ शब्द आप अपने बारे में कहें प्लीज।
Thank you, Shukriya Rishabh ji. I mean, it's a wonderful, gathering that you have here. It's a pleasure to be invited to this August gathering. I entered the banking industry, almost like an accident. I think if it weren't for a telegram that I received, this is way back in 93 that I'm talking about, I would have possibly been a professor of sorts. I had no idea about a corporate career. I had wanted, after I did my MBA, this was in a college in Puttaparthi in Andhra. I felt that, what my calling was to be a lecturer associated with that university. But a telegram came from Citibank and it kind of changed my life since then. So I spent 3 years, as you said, and then I went on. I always wanted to, try and round off my experience with a career overseas so that I can understand different cultures, how things work in a different environment. I was fortunate to be, hired into Standard Chartered Bank. I spent 13 years with them, based out of Dubai. But what was the one country operation, which is UAE, became UAE, Bahrain, Qatar. And then in 2000 actually, Standard Chartered acquired Greenlace Bank. And then we became, UAE, Bahrain, Qatar, Lebanon, Jordan, South Asia, India, Bangladesh, Sri Lanka. Then we went on to add Africa to it. So by that time I was leaving Standard Chartered, which was in 2007, this had become a Middle East, South Asia, Africa region. And I was, supporting the consumer bank, running their operations for the region. I came here, my parents were aging, ailing. Some of us who missed the bus when, new private bank licenses were given, the ICICIs and the HDFCs were set up, as you know, in the early, 90s. We missed that bus and we said, okay, let's look for a right opportunity to come back to India. That happened with Barclays in 2007. I've been with Barclays since then. In the last 4 or 5 years, I've been their CEO. Prior to that, I have been operating as their chief operating officer. So I can talk a little more about my business, but we can proceed. I feel grateful to you for having invited me to this show, and I look forward to sharing some insights that is most relevant for your audience.
You just want to know what is the real motivation behind your success?
Motivation. I think I must start in the my first role. Like I said, I was a central banker, and that happened very serendipitously. My campus or my alma mater did not have any placement of sorts. Now, if you think about an MBA in today's age and say that that program does not have a placement service, one would possibly not even join that. But even today, my alma mater believes in word of mouth, which is exactly what happened. There were a few of my seniors who joined Citibank, who gave a very good account of themselves. So people there were interested to take more candidates from our college. So my dean, with whatever criteria that he used, he picked up, I think, a few names, maybe people who specialized in finance or something like that, and we were called for an interview in Citibank. That was in itself a phenomenal stuff. And once I got in, at that point in time, I was in two minds whether to continue my passion or my calling at that point in time, which was being a professor, or to get into a corporate career. My financial circumstances and family situation was such that I think the job appealed to me a little more at that point in time, and therefore I joined. So my biggest motivation was, I discovered when in those 3 years in Citibank, which was my formative years, not real, pedigree or credential to be able to work in such a multinational company, Citibank even today, but at that time, anybody would give their right arm to be in Citibank, right? I mean, they hired some of the best people around, chartered accountants, MBAs from universities abroad, MBAs from IIMs, etc. So everybody around me was like one of the, best talent one could have. And we were in the business of launching credit cards, the first foreign bank to do so in this market. And one of the things that I learned, which has been my motivation since then, is how everybody around me talked up the opportunity on how big this could be. So we were processing roughly about 30,000 applications. So my job was, as a credit analyst, to look at whether a particular applicant is worth giving a credit card or not, because you're taking a risk on that person. It is buy now, pay later, right? So in some sense, you're taking a risk that this person would pay back in time. So everybody was talking about, we are now doing 30,000. Let's think about a time we would be doing 10x, 20x, 30x. Now, in today's world, with so much of the entrepreneurial spirit having taken shape, maybe 10x, 20x may not be too big. But those times when everything was brick and mortar and everything had to be felt, this was like a huge, huge task. But surely enough, in those 3 years, we saw that growth happen. And this is what I learned. Any achievement, I think, has to be preceded by an aspiration. Put differently, there is a strong correlation between achievement and aspiration. In order to achieve something, you have to be intentional about it. You have to aspire about it. So some of the things that people say, dream big, think about, as an entrepreneur, have, big notions, have a vision for your business, etc. I can't emphasize how important that is. I think, one of my credo has always been that it is better to have a stiff neck by aiming too high than a hunchback by aiming too low. So that's my motivation, Rishabhji, to be very intentional about whatever I want to do.
Actually, it's very motivational thing आपने जो बताई है. मुझे लगता है कि ये तो लोग आम जीवन में अगर implement करें तो they can change their life. That's really beautiful. राम जी, एक्चुअली कुछ और दर्शक है जो जानना चाह रहे हैं कि क्या रीजन रहा कि आप चीजों को टाइमली डिलीवर कर पाते हैं और फोकस के साथ में एसोसिएटेड रहते हैं और वो चीजों के लिए जो आपने टाइमलाइंस बनाई हैं उसको कंप्लीट कर पाए. तो क्या रीजन है उसके?
Yeah, I think this, one of my passion is also, or in my free time, one of the things that I do is, read quite a bit. I think I can use the framework that, I think this is developed by a management thinker called Lee Colon. This is the principle of adherence. Everybody, every new year comes, we all make resolutions. We want to do it this year. We want to improve in our, on the health dimension of our life. We want to improve on a relationship quadrant of our life. We want to improve our professional life. We have many, many things that we talk about. And this new year, and we are also, kind of in some sense bidding farewell to 2020. I'm sure people are thinking about, what is it that they can do. So plans can be made pretty easily. But one of the difficult things, as you rightly point out, Rishabhji, is about how do we adhere to it? How do we stick with it? And I think, and the model that this management thinker has developed has got three components to work on in order to improve our adherence or ability to stick with it. The first one he talks about is focus. So he talks about this as, is there one single thing that you want to do today, as opposed to saying, okay, I want to be in the pharmaceutical business. I also think that I can be good in the retail business. No, I also think I want to be, shall I say, having a 9-to-5 corporate career. I mean, these are all pretty much at odds with each other. There is very limited, time is one commodity that you even though you wish, you can't have more than the 24 hours that is given to you. So with that, I think it is important for us to focus. So one of the key principles of achieving anything is if you can be focused about what you want to achieve. Yeah, when I say one thing, maybe I'm exaggerating, but I'm just making the point that the finer your list is, the better it is. One of the lessons that I learned, Rishabhji, when after Citibank, I moved to, like I said, to Standard Chartered Bank in Dubai. And one of the things that happened was we became very good in inorganic growth, as in M&As. So we acquired the Greenlace portfolio from ANZ. Then I went to Seoul. We acquired a bank there. This was like, a one branch outlet acquiring, let's say, like the SBI in Korea. It was one of the bank which got 500 branches, etc. It was quite big. Then I went to Karachi. There was an acquisition there, the first foreign bank acquisition in Pakistan's banking history. So as we went through it, it was as if that we had a cookbook about how to do successful acquisitions and grow ourselves. But then a situation came in when the bank had a choice to acquire some assets in the US, acquire a bank in the US. The bank decided not to do it. And the bank decided not to do it because they believed that the way they differentiated it, or the way their focus was to be an emerging markets bank focused on Asia, Africa, and the Middle East. Suddenly going and competing in the developed market like the US, while one could say that it is the same banking industry, but the dynamics are a lot different, and the bank decided to do it. So when we talk about strategy, we always think about strategy in terms of what we should do, but seldom we think about it in terms of what you should not do. I always believe that strategy is about defining what is it that we would not do. So going back to the subject of focus, it's very important that if we want to adhere to anything, it needs to be those vital fews. Another thing, it's called the Pareto principle. 80% of your results, 80% of your life is defined by getting 20% of the things right. Yeah, it's a famous principle. It's common sense. That is another thing, on the subject of focus. The second one, in order to ensure that we adhere to it, is one about trying to build competence. You can't stick to it if you can't build competence. So this is about being very mindful about staying curious, staying foolish, staying, learning at every opportunity. One of the things that we do in our bank is even people like me have to go through some coding class, given that how technology is so prevalent. We all are learning our language and Python even at this age, trying to keep ourselves updated. So an important thing for us, if we want to stick to it, is we also need to develop competence on that topic. If I want to become like, let's say, A.R. Rahman, being a fantastic musician, it won't happen unless I'm willing to put myself through what it requires to be a top grade musician, right? So that is important, to develop competence. And the third one is passion. I think there is nothing that makes you adhere to it if you can stick to it, right? And in order to stick to it, I think we have to feel passionate about something. So I said previously that one of the motivation is to achieve anything, you have to first aspire or dream about it. I'm saying that that will improve manifold if your achievement is not about yourself, but it is about things outside you, things you do for others, things in service of others. This is what we call as purposeful organizations, right? So once that is clear, then it inspires sacrifice, it allows us to be perseverant, it just stimulates innovation. So to your simple question about how do we adhere to anything that we start off, either as a new year resolution or a new thing we want to do in our business, if you want to adhere to it, think about focusing, think about developing competence, think about trying to generate passion on that topic. That's my thought.
Great, great. That's really great. Ramji, as we all knew, like you spend maximum of your career time into corporate and retail banking. So what were the major challenges you faced during that entire tenure?
Yeah, I think in fact such a what shall I say? It tells a story by itself. The problems then, the problems now are no different. The problems are around growth. The problems are around profitability. The problems are around returns. It is applicable in my era. It will be applicable, I think, in the era to come. It was applicable pre-COVID. It is applicable post-COVID. So I think the challenge was about trying to grow, Standard Chartered's presence, or Citibank's presence, or Barclays' presence. Depending upon where I worked at what point in time. And the thing about this was also that you have to do it in such a way that it's not the story of one size fits all. For example, I said we were in 30 markets, right? The Middle East, South Asia, Africa region was about 33 markets. Now, each market will not be simultaneously growing all at the same time. If India is growing, because at that point in time, India shining was the predominant theme, but that wasn't the case in Lebanon, or for that matter in Qatar, or for that matter in Zimbabwe, which suffered, as you all know, a fair degree of high inflation and instability caused by it. So this was about juggling multiple things in multiple baskets. Then you got people, right? Different cultures. I was an Indian, I think in the traditional way, a South Indian at that. And then you have people from other cultures, from the Western world, which was where, Standard Chartered had, it's a bank listed in the FTSE Stock Exchange, in the London Stock Exchange. So their philosophy about what they're looking for in management is different from how we think about this, right? And to top it, because this is a multinational company, you had what we call matrix management. So I was the head of the region for the consumer operations team, but you had the head of the business in each of these geographies. Then you had this global head. Then there I was the regional head. So how do we ensure that the vision that the global head is what my vision is, and how do I translate that common vision into a shared agenda for all of those 33 markets that we were present? So, it's the same thing. Even today, I think all of your, people who are listening to this, your clients, your audience are possibly going through the same thing. How do I grow? How do I do it with the people? How do I do it in a manner that it is purposeful? So very, very similar, Rishabhji. Nothing has changed these fundamental things on business.
So as we knew, like COVID was one particular situation which impacted our personal life. So in particular, banking and finance industry, what is the major change it came with?
Yeah, Rishabhji, I think one of the things that, is pretty evident, and I feel very grateful about that, is in the great financial crisis of 2008, banks were seen to be the reason for that crisis. Yeah. So in the US, it started because I think we were taking, some subprime loans. We were distributing that to investors with a high rating, because the belief was that not all of the loans would go bad all at the same time. And when it did, banks were really in public mind the villains of the piece. It was as if these bankers, this narrative is not true in India, but this was the narrative in the broader European and in the Western hemisphere banking space when the financial crisis of 2008 happened. Yeah. So in 2000, in 1920 or 20, when COVID struck us, I think this is a case where banks are part of the solution. So many of the things that the government, the finance ministry, the RBI, SEBI, the insurance regulatory authority are all doing, are all using banks, their role as the intermediating agent. What are banks in essence? There are some people who've got capital, there are people who need capital, and you're kind of intermediating or acting as a broker between these two, right? That is simply what banking is. So, the government, the RBI, the finance ministry are all trying to use the banks to be able to simulate growth, which has been, even before COVID, it was starting to slow down after COVID, as, we read in the paper, as in, as we have evidenced in our own businesses. I think Q2 or Q1 for us in our financial year, Q1 was bad, Q2 was even worse. I think Q3, maybe some green shoots appearing, and there is a lot of hope around how Q4 will look like. Yeah. So the banking industry was no different from any of the other industries, but different from the previous financial crisis, in the sense that this time around we were the vehicle through which, there were moratorium that was announced, there was credit guarantee schemes that were announced. So many of what the government and the ministry wants to do, that has happened through the vehicle of the banks. Yeah. So I feel grateful that we have had this role to play in the economy. And I think our effort has been singularly focused on doing the right things for our customers, doing the right thing for the communities, and also, for our, staff and colleagues who work with us. That I can say for our own company. So no different, Rishabhji, from anybody else. We've seen our revenue lines slow down. Cost, I think, almost neutral, because there is uncertainty around whether people will pay on time. Our non-performing assets are going up. So overall, if you look at it for the banking industry, it seems to be a very troubled time. So we are all we are hoping that these green shoots that I said are starting to appear, specifically around the festival season now. Hopefully that will be a secular trend upwards.
Right. So, Ramji, as you know, like we are associated with new age entrepreneurs on a larger number. So there are lakhs of businesses, those are entering into the business and somehow they are not able to fulfill their vision as they planned on the initial stage. So what all mistakes they are doing and how they can avoid those things? If you can give your expertise view on this.
Okay, I mean, in terms of thoughts, Rishabh ji, I think there are two, three things that I observe, and I'm not too sure whether this is so generic because it may not appeal to everybody equally. I hope it doesn't lose value, but this is something that I have observed in my career. The first and the foremost is sometimes what happens is that we are so obsessed with valuation, growth, profitability, revenue lines, etc., that we sometimes miss that the business exists because it serves a need for our customers and clients. One would think that this is so basic that one would not forget it. But, many a times when it comes to crunch time, I've seen managers take decisions that is self-serving than, in favor of clients. So, this is possibly a cliche now if I said, put customers at the center of your business, be very client obsessed. You exist because you are serving a need for the customer. Customer is king. This is worth its weight in gold. If there is anything people take away from this conversation, because I'm grateful that people are spending 1 hour, they could put it to many more productive uses, but they've chosen to be with us now. And therefore, if there is one thing I would like for them to take away is just that, which is our business exists because we are serving the need for a customer. As long as we are focused on that, I am confident that questions around growth, questions around relevance, question around competition, question around profitability is a passing cloud. It will not be stable all the time. We know enough. We know enough about business to know that it will not be a straight line. But there isn't much to lose heart about because ultimately we understand deeply what we exist for. There are many things that I can say on that topic, but I leave it here. First one is customer is king. Let's pay attention to that. The second one is one around execution. And I think, we spoke about it a little earlier, and this is an echo of the same thing, which is around be very sure about what you are going to be focused on. You cannot be everything for everybody. You cannot be serving in all aspects. You cannot be, let's say, for example, if, you mentioned about that, Rishabh ji, earlier on. In Barclays, we are a wholesale bank. What it means is that we don't have a retail business. We do not do individual lending. And therefore, our bank model, our business model is different. We serve large corporates. So you have to be very clear about what is your customer segment and what is your value proposition for that customer segment. If you want to be everything for everybody because there is possibly some cents and dimes to be earned by doing here and there, my sense is it just creates management bandwidth diversion, and therefore the attention or focus gets lost. So that, I think, is just a reiteration. If you want strong execution, you got to be very clear about focus. You got to develop your competence. You have to develop, a passion for what you're doing. So the same things that I said earlier about execution is in the second bucket. And the third bucket is, of course, every business is about relationship, is about people. And therefore, one of the important things that I think is about trying to see whether we've got people, the right people in the right roles, whether people are able to be themselves in our workplace. Sometimes it so happens that we want to hear what we want to hear. And therefore, many of the people around us, because we may not be listening properly to them, may not be picking up vital, valuable clues that somehow, we then, go in a particular path, which if we had paid attention to what, let's say, somebody closer to the client is telling us, we could have changed that in time. So, who we've got, whether we are allowing them to be who they are, uniquely different. Everybody is uniquely different. Everybody has got a point of view. So this concept of diversity and inclusion, I think is so very important. So three things that I would recommend is, please do look at whether you understand your customer's need, whether you can anticipate your customer's need properly. Second one is, please see whether your focus is right. And the third one is, everything ultimately boils down to people. Please do pay attention to who you've got in your team, how you can upskill them, and in some extreme circumstances, maybe even change things around. So those are some of my suggestions.
One more thing we want you to add into this, like what are the major factors one can add in their financial projections once they are looking for long-term goals?
Yeah. I think it's so good, Rishabhji, that you're talking about financials. Yeah. Sometimes I think it is very easy to get lost in the accounting P&L. I make this distinction between accounting and finance. And I think if you think about why a business exists or how a business can increase its value, I can think of four things. The first thing I can think of is we have to try and see how we can increase the cash flows in our business. Yeah. So how do we increase our cash revenues? That's one, body of work that you can do. Again, go back to the basics. Who are you serving? What are you serving them with? Is there some enhancements around either our understanding of their needs or our service or product offering that can be enhanced? All of that comes under the bucket of improving, enhancing cash flows. That's the first way you can generate value. So this is what you have to think about in your financials. The second one to think about is how you can accelerate the cash flows, as in $1 or a rupee today is worth more than a rupee tomorrow. So this is the time value of money, and I don't want to get into the math of it, but essentially because of inflation, etc., what you earn today is more valuable than what you will earn tomorrow. And therefore, is there a way by which you can bank some of those revenues today? For example, what do I mean? In our business, we do something called client wallet analysis, which is basically, let's say, for example, you are in a B2B setup, and let's say you're dealing with, pick an example, Microsoft. So what is the share of the business that I have for this client? What are the ways in which I can increase that share from Microsoft? Is it because I am maybe so focused on a particular product that I'm not able to, and therefore is there some way by which I can get into partnership with somebody to be able to offer this to Microsoft? There are many things that you can do to enhance how much share you can take from your existing client. Yeah, then there is, of course, new clients. You can go into new segments with new service offerings, etc. Yeah, so that is the second thing about accelerating cash flows. And the third one is managing risks, variability of cash flows. Yeah, it's very important to do that because volatility in our business is nobody, if let's say, for example, you and I were having a conversation about me buying your business, And if I look at your business and feel that it is fundamentally risky business, then maybe I wouldn't be willing to play as much as I would somebody else's business, which is where the contracts are long-term contracts, where the industry is relatively mature, you have a good standing, your net promoter score or satisfaction, client satisfaction scores are high. What is it that you can prove that your business is less risky than before? I think is an important way of thinking about financials. So managing risk is the third one. And the last pillar is about investing for the long term. While a long-term cash flow is less valuable than current cash flow, we can't only think about the present, right? There is also a future to be lived for. You have to pass a legacy. And therefore, what are those elements that you are thinking about that will help your business be relevant in the future? It could be branding. It could be ecosystem creation. We spoke about that. In fact, today, our business is not about just Barclays Bank going and selling products to clients or services to clients. It is Barclays joined up with another partner. As an ecosystem, we go and try and solve clients' problems, right? That is the model today. So how can you invest in creating ecosystems that will help return in the future, I think is also another way to think about it. So to your point, financials are not Excel spreadsheet exercises. These are deep questions about your business. How do I increase my cash flow? How do I enhance my cash flow? How do I reduce variability in my cash flow? How do I invest for long-term cash value? I think are the elements that I think as entrepreneurs or as business people, we should be mindful of.
As we see, like world is growing very fast these days, and there are ample number of businesses those are coming up with new and innovative ideas. Even in India, like that tradition is changed. Now the new age people are thinking about the businesses. They are discussing on different cafe launch or in different corners. They are sitting all together and they are talking about the businesses. How do you see this?
Yeah, Rishabh, I feel, shall I say, ambivalent. I have got both, good feelings about it, positive things, and there are also one or two things that I worry about. And let's speak about that, and let's see whether it resonates with the audience. I think the good thing about this, Rishabh ji, is clearly, if you look at, there is a statistic, right, about 1 million people join the workforce every month or ready to start work every month. But we don't have that kind of jobs. And therefore, if we want to be reaping the demographic dividend that this country has in terms of its huge population and youthful population, we got to create jobs. And one way of creating jobs that is very, very, in thing now compared to, let's say, 10 years ago, or when I entered the industry, let's say 25 years ago, is that people are not shy of entrepreneurial efforts, which is something that we have to be, very, very happy and grateful about, because this is an entrepreneurial country. And, this is fantastic to see young people come out and try and, do things which does not necessarily require the old mindset of a 9-to-5 job. In the old era, when I joined, let's say, the industry, there were only a few communities who were naturally oriented towards setting up their businesses, etc. And there were few communities where they couldn't see life beyond, a 9-to-5 salaried job. Now I see that a fantastic mix. In fact, in big colleges and in pedigreed colleges, entrepreneurism is taught, which is fantastic, isn't it? So these are all the good things about it. India needs it. We have the talent, and the talent needs to find an avenue. There are, we have a lot of, if you think about a billion plus population, 1.3 billion population, our needs are manifold. And therefore, creative enterprises are the need of the hour. And this is an avenue to channelize these creative talents to solve some of the pressing issues of our times, right? Inequality, social justice, female participation in the workforce. These are big issues, climate change. And I hope as more and more people come and join, we will be able to find solutions for some of these pressing problems. What is the flip side? What am I worried about? I think I'm worried that people think that today I think of something, tomorrow it is a billion valuation, I'm a unicorn. I wish it were as easy as, I am here, tomorrow I wake up being Mr. Ambani too. I wish that can happen, right? So it is this painful process of being, we talk about grit, determination, perseverance as one of the skills that people need to learn. I think that is so important. There is no overnight, or at least I have not found. Let me not say therefore nobody can have it. It is my sincere wish that everybody enjoys this overnight success that they aspire for, but I have not seen it. I think it comes through hard work. I'm talking about 25 years. Maybe 25 years is old word. Maybe it is 2.5 years. Whatever it is, you've got to work through those hard years to be successful. I think that mindset about we are here for the long term, value has to be created for long term. Value is not for me. Value is for the purpose that we serve. I think those are things that I wish our first gen entrepreneurs or new age entrepreneurs get it. And the second one is the obsession about technology, about product, and failure to see how that product or technology serves the need of the clients. There is no market that exists just with technology. You can take any product, even if you take Apple, any product, it doesn't exist if it doesn't serve a need for somebody. Sometimes people miss it. So this is my worry, that now it's fashionable to say I've raised so much of £1 million or $1 million in funding. It seems to be as if it's fashionable to say that I've got money, but you got to pay them, or you got to ensure that you live long. In fact, what drives companies today is that you have to be here for the long term. I'm proud that my company is 327 years old company. It is older than the Bank of England. That shows something, right? To be existing in the market for such a long time. I think that is what I would like people to develop, the ability to think long term. So some thoughts about new age entrepreneur. I welcome it, but I worry that they think it's like an overnight money making machine.
My next question is almost similar. Like there are few businesses, those are developing and they are growing on a fast pace, or they are developing on a sustainable pace. But there are majority of businesses, those are even not able to survive for a couple of years, and then again they are starting from zero. So why there is a gap?
No, I think what you're saying, Rishabhji, is true, right? This is the process of the market. This is called, in some sense, creative destruction, right? If you think about it, sir, I mean, the present worry is, will machines take our jobs? Many of us are possibly doing jobs that can be done without too much of us by machines or robots. So, the question therefore is, how can I evolve or develop myself that I can still be relevant in that new age? This is the process of creative distraction. And I think there is no other way to say that is the risky side of any entrepreneurial effort. And that is why, in order to be successful for a long time, to aspire to be for 300 years, 500 years, and to exist for a fairly long time is so important, because we can all make those tricks and whatever shortcuts to get overnight fame, but it's not going to last. We have to put the building blocks for a business to flourish over the longer period. So there's no easy answer for this, Rishabh. I think we have to look at all that we said. Is there a problem with the people? Is there a problem with the client selection? Is there a problem in execution? Is there a problem in financing? There are many aspects that go into making a business. So one has to do a diagnostic. If there are some people who can benefit by me taking a look or sharing some of it, I'm more than happy to help put my lens on it. But without knowing the specific context, a generic response would be that this is part of creative capitalism or creative distraction. Everybody faces it, and that is why it's so important to stay close and relevant to the client segment, and not to think about it short term, think about it long term, not think about ourselves but think about others. I think these are possibly some guiding principles.
Would you like to give any message to our viewers?
I think during COVID time, it is clearly the case that I think one has started thinking about it is for no reason this has been called the lockdown, the great lockdown, or the great pause. It has given us an opportunity to think about ourselves, right? Because it has exposed human frailty. We are here one day, fine, with our faculties fully working. Tomorrow, we may not be in this place, and therefore it forces for ourselves to think about ourselves in a new light. And I picked up 3 or 4 things, again using the same Lee Corlin, that management thinkers framework, about what I feel is the old world, what I feel is the new world, or some perception, perspective to be shifted. And I thought I will share that with the audience. Yeah. So the first one is to talk about optimism, or to think optimistically as opposed to being skeptics. Will India see its growth come back? Can India be the 5 trillion economy that we wanted to be in 2025, 2030? I had a vision for my business to be 5x, 3x in 5 years. Can I do it? I mean, these are all, you can worry yourself to death around that. But I'm requesting the audience to see the glass half full rather than half empty. Yeah. So please veer towards optimism than skepticism. The second one is to think about this period as, every time a crisis brings with it its own opportunities, right? So therefore, think about this from an opportunity lens and not from a survival lens. I mean, trust me, the very fact that you are in this call with all your full faculties listening to Rishabh and I means that you are well past the survival stage. Yeah. So I think it behooves us, for ourselves, our families, our loved ones, and also for the larger community, that we think about this period from a lens of opportunity rather than just surviving from day to day. So that's the second thing. The third thing is sometimes what happens is, in a period of crisis, you see people want to take control. And I don't know whether in the audience that you have, Rishabh, whether this will resonate, but I'm talking about this from big company perspective, where you have lots of staff, where there's some degree of distance between the actual client and where you sit at the top. Sometimes what happens is, in a crisis, you try to wrestle control and you want to run it tightly. I think that is a wrong way to think about a crisis like this, a crisis ought to empower people closer to the clients to be able to think what is right and do what is best for the clients, rather than a central command, structure. Think about this, like, how each of the states reacted to the pandemic situation versus how much were they dependent on the central government to be able to drive stuff, right? The more the state governments were empowered, the more local societies, building societies were empowered. We were able to do stuff a lot more quicker, a lot more in need of things than wait for central command to come out with something. So involvement as opposed to control is another perspective. And finally, I think we should be on the focus side of things and not on the panic side of things. So look for optimism, look for opportunity, look for involvement, look for focus. I think these are values that have persevered for so long, and I have no iota of doubt in my mind it will see us through this pandemic. So thank you, Rishabh ji, for the opportunity.
Namaskar, sir. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much.